Call the meeting back to order. I'll note that Arlette Preston and Tony Garrick were on our meeting upstairs in executive session by phone, so that they did participate in that discussion period. I invite you all to join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Garrick.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Preston. Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. Inspections, construction plan reviews and inspections continue at a tremendous pace. Permit valuations are up 180% over 2019. Dwelling units are up 300% for the year, and there were 490 dwelling units built in 2019 compared to 1,476 units built in 2020. Apartment building units are up 600%, and single-family homes are up 142% over 2019. 2, FEMA has released a landmark study, Building Codes Save, a national study, which looks at the benefits of good codes in avoiding losses to buildings and building contents. Fargo is amongst the cities that have adopted the current codes that will keep everybody safe and healthy. Health. This year marks 20 years that Fargo Cass Public Health has been serving babies, mothers, and families through the Nurse Family Partnership Program. More than 1,500 families have received support in the form of nurse home visits, which promotes healthy pregnancies by providing education for first-time moms who meet the eligibility requirements. Library. The library's Children's Services Department is rolling out new Readers Advisory Service for children similar to its We May Suggest reading recommendation service for adults and teens. Children can fill out a questionnaire and return it to the library, and librarians will send a list of suggested titles and authors based on responses on the questionnaire. Recommendations take between 3 and 5 days to compile. The children's librarians can also handle a curriculum request by teachers or caregivers with the service. Police. The Fargo Police Department is accepting applications for its second free 12-week police training academy scheduled May 17th through August 6, 2021. The department strives to find men and women of all backgrounds and ethnicities who wish to provide quality professional police services to the community. To learn more, visit fargopolice.com. On November 23rd, members of the Fargo Police Department Community Engagement Team supported the Fargo Salvation Army as they distributed Thanksgiving meal boxes to more than 500 families in the community, which is more than double the amount of families served in the event last year. Officers plan to assist Salvation Army again for December when they distribute Christmas meal boxes. Thanks, Chief. Number 3, construction and planning is moving forward on the downtown mercantile building that will provide secure location for officers to work while maintaining a downtown presence. New vision, mission, and values and body-worn camera teams are actively engaged and making progress towards reshaping Fargo Police Department culture and enhancing their technology. Public Works. The Street Department encourages all those who live and work in Fargo to sign up for the Cass Clay Alerts and subscribe to the Fargo Streets notification. Snow emergency declarations by the mayor will require citizens to remove their vehicles from Fargo roads. Notification of these events will occur several days in advance through the Cass Clay Alerts, as well as local media, the city's website, and social media pages. Subscribing to the Fargo Streets category with Cass Clay Alerts will provide direct notification of the declaration, as well as emergency street closures that take place during a winter weather event. Follow-up messages will occur when the declaration is lifted or the street has been reopened. The Street Department also recommends residents subscribe to the non-emergency category for receiving messages regarding other street closures. Downtown snow hauling, emergency water shutdowns, and other general notifications are there. Links to subscribe to Cass Clay Alerts and more information regarding snow removal and snow emergency declarations are now on the Public Works website. And Ben and the team is getting tired of cleaning up the trucks and getting ready for snowfall, but hopefully that'll change in December. Otherwise, I would like to introduce Tyler Fischbach. Are you here, Tyler? Stand up, please. To the City of Fargo. Today is Tyler's first day as the city's first community engagement manager in the Department of Communications and Governmental Affairs. You might recognize him because he comes to the city after nearly 5 years at the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce. We're very impressed by his work in our community, and we're excited that he's joined the Team Fargo, and he will be focusing on website optimization, social media curation, and implementing the new community engagement strategies. Welcome, Tyler. We'll go to approve the order of agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 16th, 2020 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 28?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Preston,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now I think we're ready for resident comments. You have 2.5 minutes. Kimber, we only have 4 people signed up, is that correct? 6? And do I have an order? Yeah, please. Tyler, you got the list? On the screen, you'll see the timer, 2.3, so 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and that annoying buzzer will go off if you get there too long. So we have 3 virtual, 1 physical, is that correct? Am I reading that? 2 physical? Okay. Lori Klein, are you on? I think I see you on the screen, yes? Lori Klein, you're on for 2.3 minutes, or 3.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Fargo City Commissioners. Tonight I'm speaking not only for myself, a 30-year resident of this great city, but also on behalf of a community alliance comprised of educators, students, and their families. While I understand schools are not specifically the responsibility of this commission, these are all your constituents, and we're turning to you for help. As a matter of parliamentary procedure, it's important to know when to call the question. You saw this in action at your last meeting. Some leaders around the world have been doing just this since the beginning of the pandemic. One thing which has emerged in these months is that countries led by female leaders are handling the proactive pandemic strategies better than the rest. Germany witnessed a far lower death rate than its European neighbors. As of mid-October, Taiwan has reported 7 total deaths due to the coronavirus. And as of October 13th, Denmark registered slowest number of new COVID-19 infections for over a month. New Zealand was one of the first countries to lock down and take this disease seriously, and this summer they maintained a COVID-free status for 100 days. These proactive and coordinated policy enforcements have effectively limited the impact of the worst pandemic in recent memory for them. Their experience has been very nearly the exact opposite of ours. By contrast, our region has been hit harder per capita than anywhere else in the world, and we seem to have abandoned these best pandemic practices or lost them altogether by allowing the virus to spread uncontrolled in our communities. This unchecked community spread of COVID-19 is killing our elders, threatening our healthcare system, and making our schools unsafe for students and staff alike. Please don't allow the state's too little, too late response to be your lack of response now. Please counter the confusion caused by misinformation from all officials at all levels with clear scientific proactive answers. As your colleague did last week when the nonsense in this chamber had gone on long enough, it's time to call the question. We would like for you to close or limit non-essential businesses and recommend that citizens stay at home. Recommend that schools follow CDC guidance and return social distancing requirements for our classrooms at the very least. Please stop saying we're testing in schools to find and stop outbreaks. We're not testing students, and the rapid testing platform is not designed to detect asymptomatic cases. You've moved in the right direction here, but we started very late. Doing nothing cannot be an option now. Please call the question.
Thank you, Lori. Our next speaker is Julie Anderson. Julie?
Hello, Mayor Mahoney and City Commissioners. I am a resident of Fargo and have lived here for 25 years. We are in the midst of a global pandemic and live in a state with the highest death rate and cases per capita. At the city's press briefing, Brenton Niesemeyer of Cass County Public Health indicated that gathering in a group of 10 or more in Cass County runs a 50% chance of meeting someone infected with the virus. Yet people are often gathering in stores, bars, and schools in Fargo. The Red River Valley COVID-19 Task Force has a webpage that indicates mitigation strategies: test, trace, isolate. Yet contact tracing is no longer possible, and those infected with COVID-19 are asked to notify their own close contacts. I received a response to my letter I sent yesterday indicating cases are decreasing. It is important to note that the number of tests administered decreased over the holiday weekend, and health experts have predicted an upcoming surge. A mask mandate was implemented as a citywide mitigation strategy, which was a good first step. Gathering sizes need to be reduced, and additional restrictions must be put on businesses temporarily to help save lives and reduce the pressure on hospitals. I know you would not make this decision lightly, as this would impact many Fargo residents. Yet the alternative to stay with current strategies in place indicates grim statistics such as the following. According to data compiled from the North Dakota Department of Health website, a conservative estimate is that another 19,000 people will contract COVID-19 in Cass County in December and January. The number of people infected could more than double in the next 2 months. A projected 95 people will die in December and January in Cass County alone. Hospitalizations are projected to increase as well. North Dakota's hospitals cannot handle the steep increase at a time when the rest of the country has increased hospitalizations as well. North Dakota already has nurses from other states and healthcare professionals provided by FEMA through the U.S. Air Force. This doesn't have to happen. The Fargo City Commission can act now to help slow the spread. The time to wait and see is over. Each day you delay taking action means more Fargo residents will die. A vaccine is on the way, and we want as many possible to make it through without long-term health impacts and survive in order to receive it. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Glenn Knutson's in the chamber. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. I'm very concerned about a couple things. One is the mental health issues that are not hardly ever addressed. The impact on families, the impact on alcoholism, drug abuse is tremendous. There's been an increase in all these areas. And give you an example of one case, and granted this is in Minnesota where they have had stricter regulations for a longer time. There was a family that had divorce and a joint custody, or separate custody and visitation rights. The father and a stepmother had the child. The mother was not allowed to visit the child. And what happened is the child ended up being abused by the parents that had custody of her. The mother was not able to get opportunity to see her. It resulted in the child dying. Sadly to say, there's a lot of that type of situation going on with people. Secondly, the impact on small businesses. Just heard speakers that want to cut things down more. There's a single mother in southern Minnesota, and they've been locked down for 7 months. Their stuff is not much different than ours. The state of South Dakota has been open the whole time, and theirs isn't much different than ours. This woman in southern Minnesota was threatened by the Attorney General with a $25,000 fine and time in jail because she has 4 children to feed, single mother, has a business, and they told her she had to shut down. She refused to do it. Her community supported her. The Attorney General said they were going to send out people to arrest her and ordered the sheriff to do it. The sheriff would not. He said, if you want to arrest her, send him from St. Paul. We do not need this in our city. I talked to a man who came from a foreign country and set up his restaurant in North Dakota. He said, I never thought I'd come to a city where I had to face socialism and such restrictions on my business. And he said, I thought this was America where it was free. You said life and liberty for all. Life and liberty is for those who have mental illness and are suffering tremendously because of these masks and the lockdowns that you want to enforce on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlette, if you'd stay on, you're the only one on this line right now, and I think Greg is going to convert you to a different line, or is she time to come off?
She has to come off. We're going to do a recess and we're going to relaunch the virtuals.
Okay, what time would she be coming back on? 5 minutes? We'll take a 5-minute recess then and come back on in 5 minutes. Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order, and we'll start with our public input opportunity with the public hearings. Number one is a hearing on a dangerous building located at 1714 Fifth Avenue South. Bruce Charleson to explain.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Bruce Charleson with the Inspections Department on a dangerous building case at 1714 Fifth Avenue South. This case going to be a little bit different than previous cases. The owner has passed away on this case, so my timeline is going to be a little bit different, and I'll try and explain that. In front of the packet has your suggested motion for consideration. Please wait till the end in case there's any other testimony. The owner of this property passed away, and in our research, there are no known heirs. This makes the timeline a little different. We did work with all parties, including our city attorney, and we gave extra time to find out if there were any heirs. Due to that, we will abbreviate parts of this presentation. This property came to inspections through Cass County Social Services on January 10th, 2020. They told us they had a new case under Adult Protection Services. They had been to the home and it had hoarding issues, and the condition of the home was not good. Even the social worker knew that the home may be too far gone. And they asked us if we could inspect it and maybe offer a rehabilitation program as an option. We agreed to do that, and we needed to inspect as a first step to move forward. Social Services went to the property to talk to the owner and let him know that we needed to inspect in order to be considered for rehab. In these situations, an inspection can be very tricky and controversial, and we do take it seriously due to private property rights. An owner may want help, but knows what may happen if we come and inspect his house. The next communication we received approximately 14 days later that the owner had passed away in his home. Thank you. We placarded the home, proceeded to monitor, along with trying to find out the outcome of the ownership of the property. Due to no available owner, we took extra time. We waited approximately 6 months to verify that there were no heirs and worked with the city attorney who affirmed that. We did an inspection on the interior to verify what Cass County Social Services had told us, and the interior was very deteriorated. The property meets 7 of 10 criteria the structure would be considered a dangerous building. On the timeline, you'll see we received notification of the condition. We provided for all required notices and postings for this action. The structure was placarded on February 3rd of 2020, and we have monitored ever since. We did receive several complaints on the property. The immediate issue was squatters using maybe the interior of the house and a vehicle that was abandoned on the property. The vehicle was verified and towed. The city of Fargo boarded up the house, and we could tell from the exterior that the interior may be infested. After our interior inspection, it was verified that there was an infestation in the house. Assessors has provided a statement of valuation to detest the deterioration of the property. In your packet, you're going to find the pictures of the inside and the exterior. Due to no available owner, the inspection department secured the house on March 16th of 2020, and we decided to take the action due to the condition of this time. It is our opinion that the home cannot be repaired or salvaged, and the foundation is not structurally sound. This property did take the different track due to no owner. The Cass County will monitor this property for tax payments from here on. And our estimated timeline will be that the county may take possession. All of our expenses will be incurred for this action will be assessed in 2021. And sometime in 2022, the county will take possession and look for the city of Fargo to take possession of the property. And then it will be available as a redevelopment project. Any questions?
Commissioner Garg.
Assess to who? Are we just assessing the property and letting the assessment sit there until we take possession, sell the property, and recoup our dollars that way?
Yes, we can act within the next few months And our boarding up assessment, the towing assessment, and the demolition assessment will get assessed to the property. And I believe in August, assessments get turned over to the county and put on assessments for the property. So in 2021, all of our expenses will be taken care of, put back toward the property. If the taxes are not paid annually, I think the county, they reduce that from 5 to 3 now. Within 3, they can act. So that's 2022. They will get possession of this property. And I've had communications from the city attorneys with the county on that property, and they are aware of what's going to happen.
But just so I'm clear, when they take possession, at that point, we get paid for the assessments that we put on?
That will not happen immediately, I believe. Not until somebody else does take possession, the city of Fargo does, then they're responsible for all past assessments. But that usually gets worked into the valuation of the property. The valuation becomes the assessments at the time. If it's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, that's the valuation on the property. In our estimate, usually they're worth more than the assessment that gets to be on the property. In our last 2 demolitions, we've had very good estimates on the demolition. They come in a lot better than they have in the past. So that's getting down below the 20,000 mark for the demolition.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this House? Or is there anyone who wishes to speak? If not, I'd close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item B, Growth Plan Amendment to Lots 1 and 2, Block 7, Eagle Valley Addition. Denial recommended by Planning Commission on 11/3/20. Donald Crest to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Crest of the Department of Planning and Development. I'll be presenting the next 2 items. Neither of these have an ordinance prepared by the City Attorney's Office, one with no ordinances tonight. Our first item here, as the mayor has stated, is the Eagle Valley Addition, a growth plan amendment to locate this property here. We are on the corner of 25th Street South and 76th Avenue South. Across the street here is where the Bison Meadows developments have been going in, and farther north is Golden Valley. This, of course, is Davies High School. The other 3 corners, this blue line is the city limits line, so you see the other 3 corners of this intersection are not part of the city of Fargo at this time. This is in our extraterritorial jurisdiction and covered by our growth plan. This, as the mayor has stated, is a little different case than we often bring to you because the Planning Commission's recommendation is for denial. Let's take a look at that site on the ground there. What the applicant proposes to do, the current growth plan designation from the 2007 growth plan, is to designate this entire area, these 2 lots, as commercial. The applicant proposes to change that growth plan amendment to low to medium density residential. Here's a couple shots of the site there, just standing on the corner of 25th here and 76th, and looking down 76th and looking up 25th there. There are numerous citations in the staff report there that talk about why low-density residential designation would not be appropriate for this location. There are citations from the 2007 growth plan as well as the GO 2030 plan. Staff's major points here are, this appears in your staff report, but I just put them all up here for everyone to see here. The commercial land use designation is the appropriate one for the subject's location at the corner of 2 arterials. Commercial designated areas are intended to provide convenient services to the surrounding development area. Subject property is the only currently developable property on the corner there. The other 3 corners are not in the city yet, and is one of the few remaining developable commercial properties in a heavily residential 3 square mile area. We'll look at that in a moment. Again, retaining the commercial land use designation is essential, providing surrounding services. And we also need to bear in mind that the growth plan is a long-term view with a 20 to 50-year horizon. This is in our Tier 1, 20-year horizon from 2007, so 2027. with the goal of creating a community where things are integrated. That's the goal of the long-range plan, of course, is to make sure growth goes together. And if you chip away at that, you end up with a different result than was in your growth plan. So just take a look at this. This is the map we referred to. The area inside the red line here is about 3 square miles. The subject property is down here. You'll see this is pretty heavily residential here. You're all probably familiar with this area here. This is the most recent, one of the most recent subdivisions. This is Selkirk over here. This is undeveloped. These are the Madeline's Meadows, Golden Valley, Crofton Coves, Bison Meadows. Very little area here is designated as retail. Some of it is actually developed with housing. Some of it's developed with mini storage. One property here is undeveloped. But if you're living down here and you need to go to the store, you need to go up here to 52nd, and up here there's the convenience store. Then there's some shops over here, as well as the grocery store up here off 52nd. Cash-wise up there. So you're looking at a fairly large area that's only going to be, get developed some more here in a few different places that lacks any real retail locations. And again, part of our plan, with the Go 2030 and the 2007 growth plan is to have neighborhoods where services are relatively convenient. It's not probably going to be like the old days where you had a grocery store on every corner, but we want to have things that are reasonable, walkable, bikeable, and at least not a long haul to get some basic services and necessities. So these are the bases upon which staff originally had based their recommendation to denial for the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission, by a vote of 6-2, concurred with that recommendation and brought that recommendation of denial forward to your commission here. So the applicant, John Eunice from Eagle Ridge Development, is with us in person here today, and Mr. Jim Bullis may be joining us live as well. I believe they will wish to address the commission. Staff's recommendation is shown on the screen and stated in your staff report. Again, this is a move for denial. In this case, just the regular majority, the simple majority is all that's required for denial, as supermajority is not required in this case.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this motion?
Yeah, Mayor, Commissioners, John Eunice, Eagle Ridge Development. Donald, thank you. I appreciate the presentation.
You want that map, John?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. So one of the reasons that we're proposing what we're proposing is so that we can develop up to 43 new affordable single-family lots in this portion of town. We've been developing this property for approximately 6 years. This would be the final phase of that development. And it wouldn't be the last time we'd be in front of you. If we get the growth plan amended and approved, we will be working with staff on both the platting and zoning side of things, so you would see us again in a couple of months with our proposed project. I think if you talk to anyone in the construction industry, you realize how difficult it is to truly provide affordable single-family home ownership opportunities. There's just a lot of things fighting against us. Specials, construction costs constantly increasing, land costs constantly increasing. This proposal gives us an opportunity to do just that. If you look at the number of homes, and I believe some of you were sent a chart, but if you look at the number of homes that were sold between $200,000 and above, nearly 40% of them were between $200,000 and $250,000. That is a really difficult price point to hit with new construction. It's really difficult to hit. You can't do it with larger lots. You can't do it with 80-foot lots. You can't even do it with 50-foot lots. This gives us an opportunity to come back in front of you to show us what we're proposing for affordable single-family homes in this area. With that, I'll open it up to any questions you guys might have.
Any questions by the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I just have a couple of
Pepcorn.
comments and maybe a question. So to me, the challenge is, so I agree, MetroCog, 76th Avenue, we're looking at that as being an arterial street and all that. However, when I look at this picture, right across the street is the high school. And so to me, having houses right across from a school, that's kind of what we want. So I think it's a challenging location because I think it's an ideal spot for housing, but it's also on 76th Avenue. So that's just my editorial comment. Maybe Nicole, maybe you can help explain this to me, but to me, isn't that what we want, is houses right across the street from a high school? To me, that seems like a good thing.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think we have a mix of priorities in front of us. And I think from us, it's hard to, if you could bring up that other PowerPoint real quick. And so just to give kind of a broader perspective, let's see here. Yeah, that's good. So I think just to pull out a little bit to look at the larger context is what we're charged with today. And the image that's kind of a bubble diagram is on your left. And this 76th Avenue corridor is, we're counting on a future interchange there. And this entire south side of 52nd Avenue, that's probably what we're looking at as our largest commercial corridor. And so when we start chipping away at it, that gives us concern and pause. And so that almost ranks as a higher priority than the housing next to the high school. But you're not wrong. I think if we were looking at a different roadway network with 25th Street and 76th Avenue of being future 5-lane arterial roadways, it'd be kind of like putting a single family back of house next to 45th Street. And so that's our concern, is the land use in relationship to the corridor plan. And in some situations that can work, but we would like to study that further if that was a direction you would like to go into. The little image to the bottom is kind of the middle.
Just a follow-up, but I mean, if you look, the flavor of the adjoining lots, if you look, there's single-family houses along 76th. You know what I mean? There are, and so I totally agree that's the long-range plan, but if you look at what the precedent is already there right now, to me, that looks like a lot more development that's already there. So I guess that, and I'm not trying to disagree because you're the paid expert and I am not, but to me, if you look at what's there, and I would much rather have houses around a school than commercial development. I just think that adds, because that's what people want to have. Anyway, that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
You've got a lot of empty lots there too as well, Commissioner Gehrig.
I mean, I have to agree. When we say we have a mix of priorities, it's the difference between what we want to force the market to want versus what the market is telling us. They're not going to put money into it and build it if we're not going to have it see it developed. This is what they're seeing. And what I've seen from residents too is everyone's really frustrated when they go out there look for their first house and everything costs $300,000. I mean, that's a real thing. So if we can get more stock of affordable homes, 200 to 250,000 that are quality homes, instead of more apartments, because what I see going here is a strip mall, Papa John's Pizza and things like that, which is what I've seen in West Fargo on lots like this, along busy, roads like 76 is going to be, is you're going to see those type of things. And I'd be pretty upset if I was the house just to the north of that, where I have a new home, and then they put in a strip mall next to me. You know what I mean? That's right in my backyard. So I wouldn't appreciate that. I think we should listen to what the market is saying, and the market is clearly telling us that this is a very popular area around a very big school where people want to live. And I live in this area. Tim, you live in this area too, just to the north of it. And that area with Hornbachers and the gas stations and the restaurants there, that's not a tremendous distance away. So I just hope we allow the developer to develop it as they see fit and let them meet what the market is demanding, instead of us trying to force our mixed priorities on them and watch it sit there empty until we actually develop that road.
If I may,
Yes,
Mr.
Nicole.
Chairman, if I could say something.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think if I may, just real quick, we're looking at a 20-year plan, 50-year plan, and so we recognize the market priorities of today may be different than the land use patterns that we're recommending to be successful for 20 to 30 years in our future. And so I guess if the concern is $250,000 lots, let us come back to you and show you the inventory that's on the books right now for $250,000 lots. And so, and maybe John can speak to that inventory right now on $250,000 lots. In my perspective, the communication that we've had with the developer, he wants to flip the land. And in that relationship to, it's okay to flip the land, but in relationship to giving up future value for people who live there to access commercial retail that's going to better their lives in their neighborhood is my concern.
Commissioner Gregg.
Yeah, and I'm sensitive to that, but in the meantime, someone is paying taxes on this land, right? Someone's holding it. There's a
I
business-
agree that holding costs are a
and
problem.
it's
I
high.
agree the holding costs are a
And
problem.
as we develop this, they're gonna get special assessed on that on top of that. So it's not gonna just be their property taxes, but as we grow that and as we put an overpass in, people are gonna get special assessed, it's gonna cost more and more and more. And then at some point, they're gonna sell it and there's gonna be more apartments. You know what I mean? And that's my fear. This is either gonna be a strip mall or an apartment. This isn't gonna be a grocery store. It's not big enough, it's not popular enough. But what Dave was saying is it's right across from a high school. It's a great location. It's walkable to a high school. You know what I mean? And I understand when you're looking more towards interstate, yeah, more businesses there. I get the plan. I'm not saying the plan is bad. What I'm saying is real world, someone's holding on to this property and they can make profit now and give us something that we need in Fargo, which is more single family homes. But we're saying, well, we want to wait and do something better. Well, that property's going to switch hands and someday it's going to be a giant, probably incentivized apartment building.
I'll jump in real quick just to speak to what Nicole mentioned. I mean, we don't have a single
Chairman?
available lot in that price point right now where someone could come buy it and build a $200,000 to $250,000 house. If you drive down there and look at the amount of activity that's happened in the last 5 to 6 years in that area, it's pretty astonishing the number of homes that have been built. So this would be our only inventory in that price point if we were able to get it approved. And I would doubt that you'd be able to find maybe more than a couple lots in all of Fargo where that's an opportunity.
Nicole, when we look up on the map that's up there right now, how about those lots that are to the right upper corner? Those must be smaller lots. And I know, John, you got some stuff across the Oscar 25th. They must have some small lots, don't they, or not?
Sorry, I don't mean to jump on your toes, Nicole, but those ones to the north have all been sold and all have houses built on them. There's maybe
Up north?
the ones up to just to the north of 74th Avenue. Right
I mean,
there. The ones
north
in
of
Bison
Davies.
Meadows.
North of Davies, over there to the right. Keep going.
Yep, that's Bison Meadows, and that's been developing, and there's a builder that is working through that property, and will probably be built out in the next 3 years.
Really?
On that.
And what's the price range on those?
Those, again, there's a few where you can get into that 200 to 250,000. The vast majority of those homes are $270,000 to $300,000.
Thank you. Donald, we got to get more up-to-date pictures.
I think Commissioner Preston would like to.
Mr. Pepcorn. Or Preston, I'm sorry, Commissioner Preston. Arlette, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not certain how to get your attention here, but, so, you know, I think this goes back to the whole issue of predictability. When we set out plans, trying to ensure predictability, not only for the developers, but also for the neighborhoods. And this was in the growth plan for commercial. So the houses north of this should have had that information when that development was built. You know, I think we need to go back again and understand that the plans are put in place for a reason, and that is to provide some predictability. And if we start backing away from that, we're going to have the same issue that we've had all along, which is confusion for the neighborhoods as well as the developers. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? Let me just get public done first. Is there anybody else in the public that wishes to speak to this issue? John, you're the only one, and Bill isn't here? Okay, we'll close public hearing. Now we can go to discussion and or a motion. Commissioner Gary.
You know, to that predictability aspect, I'm sensitive to what you're saying, but if you live in a neighborhood like mine in North Fargo, we just built a church, or we're building a church and a 96-unit apartment building that's 5 stories high in the middle of a neighborhood that's been there for forever. One of the oldest neighborhoods. And while I supported that project, that wasn't in the plans of someone who's been living there for 30 years. You have to adjust to what the market is showing you. And what the market was showing us up in North Fargo in Roosevelt, where I live, was that we needed more apartments for kids to go to school. They could walk to school. It's very convenient for them. Maybe some more faith-based housing. That's what the market was showing us, and that's what they built there. So yes, having a plan is important, but just like anyone with a job here that's dynamic, you go in with a plan, and the plans change. You have to adjust to what you're seeing. So honestly, I think this is a very important development for us. It's affordable housing. It's near a school. And it's embedded in with other neighborhoods. So again, if I lived north of that, I wouldn't have checked with this city and see if they're going to want to build a strip mall there. That's not what normal people think like. So I just hope that we're sensitive to that and that we're able to adjust and be flexible as a city government. Because if not, if we're rigid, we're going to see a lot more people in apartments and a lot less people owning homes.
Commissioner Preston?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just say, I agree fully. The affordable housing intent here is wonderful. It's just the site is not good. So.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick things. So when you start looking at that picture, so you'd walk across the street to tennis courts, baseball fields, a pool, football fields. That's perfect residential. That's not commercial. That's I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, but this is where we want houses to be built, not strip malls. And so to me, this is just look at the picture speaks for itself. Look where it is. It's across the street from potentially a new, well, it's Park District land as well. I'm sure there's eventually going to be a school and a grade school there. I mean, you got to. Part of it is we have policies and stuff. Sometimes you just got to look at stuff and go, hey man, if I was looking for a $200,000 house and I could be across the street from all those amenities, that's pretty good. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yes.
Yes, there's amenities in regards to the parks and all of that. But again, you're going to have to drive probably 3 miles to get a gallon of milk. So the amenities also include some commercial mixed in with the neighborhood. And if you would go back and read the growth plan, that is the intent. That's the vision with the growth amenities close to neighborhoods. So one. Concur with the recommended motion to concur with the Planning Commission and to deny.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Do I have another motion?
I'll move to approve. Oh, do you have
I have a question, if I might.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not sure if the developer or our team can answer this, but is there a compromise? You know, what I'm hearing and what we all know is that there's just a dire need for affordable housing, of course. And yet there's also a concern, what's the future of commercial in this world we're in? And I don't know what that will look like. If we were to sit down and a concern I have with the affordable housing is, which we need it, is being across the street from 6-lane or 5-lane roads. You know, that to me is just not a good fit to have a house looking out onto that big of traffic. But what's the middle ground? How can we find something where we get the affordable housing and maybe some development on that commercial edge?
I mean, I think from a staff's perspective, I don't want to, I would pass the question to the Eagle Ridge developers. We've been flexible, or I feel like we've offered options that we could look at in some regards. And I think also there's a ROI study that we're just kicking off to look at the long-term finance feasibility for the city of Fargo as we build commercial and residential. And I think that's about 3 months out from 3 to 4 months out. So I think from a staff's perspective, we understand things change and climate changes, but we need more time to analyze it. We've asked for some more time from the applicant, and they have an application ready to go.
How much time did you ask for?
I'd be open to look at, to see what options are, but I think the developer has a plan that he would like to implement. He also.
John, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so I'll jump in a little bit. I think, I think we've shown in the past that we like to work with staff. We like to work with the neighbors. I think this is just one of those cases where we don't believe that long-term commercial makes sense there. If you look at the parks that are right across the road, if you look at how close it is to the schools, These are all things that tell us, in our opinion, that it would work for single family. So whether it's now or 10 years from now, having those amenities right there works out great, not for a strip mall, but for a neighborhood.
And I would just say, maybe stop thinking about a strip mall per se, and there's lots of other commercial options besides just a strip mall.
The strip mall, okay, the strip mall. I move to approve the plan for the Eagle Valley Edition.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So if you look at 52nd and 25th right now, there is a neighborhood that comes to that corner. There's also Don's Car Wash that's across from it. There's the church that's right next to it. And then there's another neighborhood, Rose Creek is in that area. That's probably close to what we're talking about in as far as location and what's happening. The difficulty is the planning commission has voted to deny because they want to keep to the growth plan. And that's the difficulty, is you've made a commitment to something you want done, but the reality also is on 76, we do have more commercial that could go west of there, right? Donald, exactly across from it, is that all residential or is there commercial space?
So none of that's inside city limits and would almost have to wait till after the diversion is.
That is in there, but is it right now on your little map where you had red? My assumption is commercial is
All
west
four
of there.
corners are designated as residential, sir, that's correct.
Commercial.
Commercial, yeah, sorry, commercial, yes, they're red, they're for commercial.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say, I think actually this particular intersection is very close to the type of intersection that I used to live close by, which is 25th and 32nd. That's an example of residential coming up against the commercial, but there's commercial on all four corners. And there's probably a smallish strip mall there, but it's very neighborhood friendly. So that's an example of an intersection that's similar to this one.
Yep. Any other discussion? Mr. Strand.
Mayor, thank you. How can we know this won't end up being apartments?
You don't.
If this decision goes down and then people come back and want to put apartments there, will that get a green light?
Well, I'd say even with the growth plan change, you can have apartments there. So until you see the plat come forward and the zoning change come forward, which will be, as John said, right next to this. So probably in about 2 weeks, you'll see an application or 4 weeks zoning and plat.
And we're actually down zoning. If you look at the growth plan, we're proposing low density residential. That's the only option that we have for single family. We have some high density residential on there. We just don't think that that's a fit for this area. So we are you will see in the next probably 2 months, if this gets approved, we will be coming forward with the zoning request and a plat that would show the single family lots.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Oh, go ahead.
Help me understand the extraterritorial regulations in management and future. Across the street, in every regard, this is all extraterritorial. Is that right?
So all of that would need to be, sorry, Donald. All of that would need to be annexed, platted, and zoned in order for it to be developed.
And we don't know yet what that'll be, but it's expected to be commercial?
Yeah, we have plans on the books for the commercial development.
And how about the arterial routes, heaviness of the traffic? Who decides how big a highway that is? Or how?
So you've already approved those plans, that study, that 76th Avenue study was in front of you.
That's already through there. Mm-hmm. And that's a heavy, high trafficked road.
Any other discussions? Commissioner Preston, any other discussion? No? Okay. If you just raise your hand, I'll know you want to say something, so I can see you on the screen to raise a hand. No other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
No.
Strand?
No.
Mahoney?
No. So I need another motion. We didn't deny it, we didn't approve it, so I need something.
If nothing happens, it stays the same, right? She moved to deny it, I moved to approve it, nothing happens, it stays the same.
Nothing happened, but we need to do something.
Do we?
Yes.
What motion did you vote on, sir?
To approve it. So my recommendation is you try again for a denial. I mean, you need action.
But, Mr. Chairman, we don't have to do anything more if we don't want to.
Well, you have to, because it's before us,
this
it's
is
a
a-
zoning question, so the city has, the planning commission has already said what it wanted, and the commission has to make a decision.
This is a growth plan.
Otherwise, it goes back to commercial, right?
Right. This is a growth plan amendment. So if we don't have an amendment, it just stays as what it is,
Yes.
correct?
Eric, weigh in. We heard the dog weigh in.
Generally speaking, zoning matters require some action one way or the other because of the requirement in the state century code to have certain findings of fact that support your decision. And so we run into this challenge from time to time, and it gets to be a tough one because you just can't quite get a majority on the decision, but that would be preferred. Candidly, I have never thought about that with respect to a growth plan amendment. There may be a little bit more latitude, but in the end, it does, when you reach a stalemate, things stay where they're at.
Commissioner Preston, you said something, Commissioner?
Sure, I'll make another motion, see if it goes anywhere, to deny.
John, do you want to add your amendment of something you wanted them to try to work out?
I'm not sure it fits with her motion or not,
You can amend her motion.
but my thinking is this: let's send everybody back to the table and see if they can come up with a creative compromise and see what it looks like. I'm not sure if that's possible, but that's what I'd like to see.
Okay, so Commissioner Preston has a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
So I have a question. She already made that motion. Can you make it twice? You can't make it twice. She made the exact same motion. She didn't get a second. Can I just sit up here and make motions all day, the same motion over and over again?
Well, I think until you get an action, I don't know. She still has to get a second, which she hasn't got.
In question, I mean, it didn't get a second, but you had another motion since then, so did the circumstances change and sort of give rise to it? Under the circumstances where, again, the statute and our own city ordinance under zoning matters sort of requires this set of findings.
I'm going to remember this and make numerous motions over and over again. I know that.
Tony always does. Got to be careful on this, right, Doug?
Mr. Chair, so to me, the argument of us not taking action, it sends it back to the planning commission, and it sends them back to try to have some type of compromise. That's what I think our intention is. So by us not taking action, we are going to send it back to planning, if that makes sense. And if you want us, I'll make that motion, but otherwise, I think by us not taking action, that's what our intent is.
So your motion is to bring it back in 2 weeks, or?
No. If I make a motion, I would just be, let's just send it back to the planning commission and let them try to work something out.
Is there a second?
Second. I guess.
Moved and seconded. The motion is to send it back to planning and see if they can come up with a compromise.
Correct.
Mr. Preston, do you want to make any comment on that?
Nope.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Preston,
No.
Strand,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes. Item C, change plat for Robbins Lane South between 66th Avenue and Selkirk Drive South, located between Block 2 and Block 3, Selkirk Place First Edition, to be renamed Archer Place South, Robin Lane South. Approval recommended by Planning Commission 11/3/20. Explanation by Donald Kress.
Good evening again, Commissioners. We call this a name change plat. We're not changing the name of the plat, just the name of a street. This street depicted in Selkirk Place First Edition is currently known as Robbins Lane South. The developer has asked that plat name be changed to Archer Place South. That's what the street looks like there. There's the plat. This is considered a major plat because we're talking about changing the name of right-of-way, but very straightforward plat here. We haven't had any comments on it, and the Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen, just to change the name of Robbins Lane South to Archer Place South.
Is there any president who wishes to speak to this name change? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, I'll close public hearing.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Preston,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
We can take a break after this next one. Item D, Development Plan for Tax Increment Finance District, 2020-01, to redevelop partial property southeast 6th Avenue, North Oak Street in Oak Grove neighborhood to include clearing of existing buildings on the property and construction of 117 apartments and 14 condominiums. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. This item is consideration of a renewal plan, which would include a TIF district for a housing project to be located in the Oak Grove neighborhood. The hearing is also on the proposed development agreement. The plan is to remove blighted properties on this block, really clear all the buildings, and in place would be constructed this 117 unit apartment building, which would also have 14 condominiums on the top. This has gone to the Tax Exempt Review Committee. The Tax Exempt Review Committee has recommended approval of it. The request was for TIF funds to pay for extraordinary costs, including land acquisition, a flood protection levy, demolition. Much of the cost is to remove substandard soils. The report was sent to, the business plan was sent to our financial advisor, and they concluded that based on the internal rate of return and the coverage requirements, the project would not be feasible without the public assistance. The report also noted that the developer would bear all risk with the project. The PFM financial review also estimates the maximum value of the TIF revenue would likely be about $3.5 million. This particular application went to the Cass County for review. The Cass County opted not to participate in the TIF after the first 5 years, which really put the project on hold. It wasn't feasible even with that TIF amount. Our finance committee looked at the importance of that flood protection levy and is recommending that in addition to the TIF with the reduced county contribution, that the city of Fargo provide $625,000 in sales tax funds to essentially replace what Cass County wouldn't provide and provide that flood protection needed for the neighborhood. Another important part of this application or this project will be Renaissance zone approval. That application is pending, but I wanted to let you know that still needs your action. The Renaissance zone incentive would strictly be for state income tax, so it wouldn't affect local property taxes. It would just be state income tax incentives for the buyers of the 14 condominiums. Let's see. Okay, let's see if you have any questions before we open the public hearing. The recommended motion includes adopting a resolution that would adopt the renewal plan and approve the developer agreement with Craig Enclave Oak Grove LLC. I included in the packet just some basic information on what was in the developer's agreement, but then I forwarded you the full agreement this afternoon. So the motion would be to approve both the renewal plan and that development agreement. Austin Morris is here to answer any questions or maybe make some comments on the this particular project. I think one of the, this has some of the highlights. This site history, we've been looking at redevelopment options of this since 2003, and it's just a difficult site to develop without the use of any incentives or often even with the incentives, we've had numerous developers just back away from the site because it's a tough site to develop. So Austin, do you want to make any additional comments?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the progress we've made also from city staff and also going through the but-for test for TIF review. I think the interesting thing, when I brought this forward actually with Jesse, I spoke on the collaborative effort with the neighborhood and the necessary completion of the levee project and the challenges with this site. So I won't focus on those, but this is an interesting project that's taken 17 years to have something accomplished here, and I'm really excited about it. And as you can see, I think we don't have any neighbors present because we spent, Jesse especially spent the last year and a half, 2 years working with the neighborhood on what we could put here that would not only end up working out from a development perspective, but also work out for the neighborhood. And they vied hard for, they wanted some single family ownership within the development. So we worked on a creative approach to having multifamily or residential rental housing on the main first, second, and third floors, and then having for sale rental housing on the top. And then we had probably a few different, three or so different meetings with the neighborhoods to share the various designs that we've come up with, and landed on one that I think was pleasing to everyone. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have related to the challenges of the project or otherwise.
Commissioner? Commissioner Garrick?
It looks nice, looks very nice, and I'm excited that it's going to be developed. That's fantastic, especially given the timeline that's in front of us here too as well. But here we go again. We've always said we're going to stop incentivizing apartments, and here we go. We're going to incentivize apartments, and a very large apartment at that. Above and beyond the incentive, we're also going to give $600K for a wall. So that's even above and beyond the incentive. And then Jim made a point of saying they're not going to get a Renaissance zone with property taxes. They'll just get the income tax write-off. Well, obviously you can't have an RZ on top of a TIF, and because if you're not paying taxes, then you can't pay into the TIF. So I want to clarify that for people who are watching. And the last thing I'll say is I think the worst use for a TIF is land acquisition, right? Because basically what I'm hearing is we overpaid for this land, and now we don't want to pay taxes for 20 years because we overpaid for it. So we could argue about the levy and how that's helping the public and things like that, and even open spaces and other stuff like that. But I overpaid for the property, therefore I don't want to pay taxes, I think is the worst use for tax incentives. So I'll be voting no.
I don't know, Austin, if you want to comment to that. I think that was just his comment. Anybody else, public, want to speak? Austin, you want to say anything else?
No.
I do think that one of the things the public should know is the project wasn't going to go forward because the county did not do the full TIF. So the city staff thought of another way of making this happen, and we heard a lot from the neighborhood that they'd like this project to go forward. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Preston.
If I could just make a statement. I also think that it's indicated with the time frame. This is just a really tough piece of property to develop. So, I think it's totally appropriate for the kind of public incentives we're trying to put into it.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion, and if you don't mind, just a couple quick comments. The other thing is this area around the Oak Grove, they've lost a tremendous number of houses because of the flood protection that's been put in there. So that's obviously a good thing. And I don't know if Brenda would be willing to talk, but it is a legitimate thing that there is flood protection that will be a part of this project that is necessary. Otherwise, we had to continue to put in temporary levees, and we can't get that. Can't be part of our long-term thing. So that's a legitimate cost. If you ever have a chance to drive that block, I would encourage you to do it. And if we don't do something to participate to help, it'll stay that way for 20 more years at least. I mean, I believe this will help that neighborhood. I believe it'll help the school. And I think there will be a lot of kids, and we will be replacing some lost housing. So that's the reason. Tony, I totally agree. We have to be careful how we spend the money, but sometimes if we don't participate, then nothing's going to happen. And so that's why I support it, and I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. I'd like to know who's responsible for this flood protection there? Is it the Diversion Authority? Is it Fargo? Where does that buck stop. Is it ours? Is it the city's taxpayers on top of all their flood protection they're funding in other capacities, or?
Brenda Derrick's coming up to answer that question. Commissioner Strand? Jim Gilmer, don't go too far now.
You know, as he lets me come up and he just walks away. So I guess I'm taking it over. So that is not in the overall flood protection. So the diversion has taken over the overall flood protection needed to be associated once the diversion is operational. So today we have a levee there and we make a connection point at the railroad tracks. So we can get to it, we can take care of it. The connection is all on railroad property. So that's why that responsibility is falling back on us if there's more done than what's there today.
So just to answer that, if we have a 100-year flood, this area wouldn't be bad, but if you had the 500-year event, you're gonna have to bring trucks in there, put clay dike in there and do a temporary measure. That's what happens. If you do it now with a permanent measure, like Commissioner Pepcorn talked about, it'll be done. We will never have to go in that area. Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
So, Mr. Chair, the other thing is there's the subsoil, it's a mess. There's lots of things that if we do have to do a levee, it isn't like you would just come in and put, I mean, there's severe subsoil issues that's from 100 years ago. And so all that is going to be addressed if we do this. And so I do think it's a legitimate part of our flood protection. It's going to be part, and maybe you can answer, will this be part of then our permanent flood protection so we don't have to do temporary there?
Correct. So because what they'll be doing is bringing the levee back towards the street, west towards the street. And so then we will not be putting that temporary plug-in on the railroad property.
Commissioner Strand.
Is there anybody who could tell us why the county reduced their support to 5 years?
Jim Gilmore, I think, can.
And Mr. Chairman, we actually have a new Cass County Commissioner sitting in the audience, so we could really put him on the spot and if we wanted to, but I'll let him make that decision.
I actually wasn't at the meeting. I wasn't able to attend. I know, Mayor, you had spoken to one of the county commissioners. I think there was some concern on the rate of return, but you know, our financial advisor, I talked to him and said, do you think we could offer them less and they'll still do us? And his answer was, no, this is really risky. The condo sales are extremely risky. You know, there's just no proven market for that. And so they're taking a lot of risk to build the condos in. And if they don't sell them in the 1 to 2 years, could very well end up losing money.
The commissioner that was replaced firmly believed only in 5 years of support, John, and so had a tendency, that's where the commission went. I hear our new commissioner understands that a TIF is valuable for our community, and we'll look into those closely. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston? Strand?
No.
Gary?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Arlette, I think you said aye?
I said aye, sorry.
Okay.
I had to unmute.
We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll restart at 6:25. Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. Item 31, amendment to the memorandum of understanding with the Fargo Municipal Airport Authority to extend the deadline for notice of termination to 7/1/21. Eric Johnson to explain.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As my letter to the City Commission suggests, first of all, there was a MOU, of course, that was entered into between the city and the airport back in January of this year. That MOU had sort of a short window to see how the parties moved forward with discussion, and there was a July 1 notice deadline. The Airport Authority is made a proposal at their August 25th meeting to revise that deadline to a year hence, to July 1, 2021. The agreement does have sort of annual notice provisions regardless, so that it's terminable on notice every year. Basically, it turns into an annual renewable agreement in that sense. So in any event, what's before you is a proposal from the airport to extend that July 1st, 2020 notice of termination deadline to a year later, July 1st, 2021.
Is there a motion or discussion?
And you can either approve it, deny it, receive and file, and it's your choice.
Commissioner Strand.
I move to receive and file.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Preston, do you have any comment? No? Okay. Commissioner Gary.
Yeah, I just want to say I'll support this because I have not spoken with the airport authority yet. I know that some of you have. John, you're on the airport authority, or you're the liaison, so you've had those discussions. I haven't had the opportunity, so that's why I'm supporting this. I'm not saying one way or the other which way I'm going to go, but I'm going to schedule a meeting with Sean Doberstein and whoever else he wants to come with and talk about the issues that pertain to this. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Preston,
Aye.
Gary,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. COVID-19 update. Explanation by Desi Fleming. Desi, you're on the screen.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm just going to give a really brief numbers update before we get into our subtopics. So I have some slides that they'll put on the screen for me just to show new cases for the state as well as in Cass County remain high, but they're starting to taper some. Today's results, Cass County has 1,166 active cases. Next slide, we've seen a decline in our 14-day positivity rate over the past week as well. I think it's too early to say that this will be an ongoing trend due to mitigation efforts, or if it's just due to a lag in testing or some other cause. So we're cautiously optimistic in watching numbers. So hospitalizations remain steady, and hospitals have adapted their space to accommodate as best as they can. Staffing remains tight. However, locally, hospitals have been able to acquire some staffing resources along with expediting some of their onboarding processes. So they, both our major health systems seem to be managing at this point. We're testing 7 days a week in Cass now. We're beginning to utilize some different testing platforms in Cass too, along with the rapid testing and saliva testing in certain environments. And we continue to use about 20% of the state's lab capacity for our testing in Cass. There have been 41 deaths in Cass County in the month of November. Total deaths for Cass is at 126 with 927 total deaths within the state. So we still are seeing quite a bit of death in our state. And then the last one really goes back to our risk assessment. We've changed a little bit in the fact that our active cases are still in that critical red category levels currently. And with the positivity rate that's dropped, that's put us back down into the high risk orange category. So that's just kind of the status of where we're at with numbers. So then I will let the other groups talk on the other points here.
Okay. Mike, do you have some things?
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Good evening. We have a series of presenters that are going to step to the podium next to provide the Commission with a few updates on some requests that came out of the November 16th commission meeting. And so what we wanted to do was just provide a high-level summary of those research requests and topics. We are going to start first with a report from the police chief, and the chief is going to talk just a bit about some of the mask requirements and enforceability of those requirements. And then after that, Kent Costin and I are going to provide a brief overview of our financial plan through the end of the year into 2021. And then Jim Gilmore will join us after that to talk about some of the business impacts. And then Suzanne and Desi are also going to remain on the line. They're going to talk about vaccine distribution and the initial plans for that as well. So we'll call in the police chief first, and then we'll start with Kent and myself after that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, commissioners. In terms of our enforcement at the police department, as you know, we focus largely on education, looking for voluntary compliance in our community, and we've had excellent response from our community members. In terms of the calls for service related to mask violations, since the emergency order on November 16th, the department received a total of 6 calls for service, which is a very manageable number. 5 of those involved businesses, and 1 involved a private entity, actually a homeless location. And in all of the business calls, we were able to address those via phone through our shift commander overseeing the calls, and also communicating all of this to Fargo Cass Public Health. And we've been working cooperatively with them to address and educate our business owners. And we haven't had any issue in terms of compliance there. On the private entity, we're also following up with Fargo Cass Public Health in terms of an individual who may be positive and not following particular mandates. So that hasn't been too cumbersome. I think the process we put in place with the Red River Regional Dispatch Center is working well, and we're able to provide some immediate oversight and appropriate response from the police department. In terms of our capacity issues, I think we've done very well here as well. Since the emergency order went into effect, we have conducted 45 compliance checks of licensed premises. And of those 45, we observed no violations in all but 5 instances, 3 regarding masks and 2 regarding capacity. And after discussing and educating the proprietors in all 5 of those instances, we gained immediate compliance, and there hasn't been any further issues. A couple of these establishments, some which we may have discussed previously in regards to occupancy concerns, were checked more than once over this period of time. And again, we've either found compliance or through education and discussion have gotten to a compliance stature. So we're pretty satisfied with that. That's all I have unless there's questions.
Any commissioners have any questions to the chief? Commissioner Preston, any questions? Nope. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. That was helpful.
Very good. Okay, Mike?
Real good. Thank you, Chief. And so next, Kent and I are going to talk very briefly about the end of the calendar year, the end of this year, and what it means for the budget in our COVID response, and then what we're planning on for 2021. There's an attachment number 2 in your packet this evening is a memo summarizing the various agencies from which we've received federal support, state support, in the form of pass-through grants from the state of North Dakota. And we're very appreciative of these resources, because these are resources that are going to allow us to not only reimburse costs that we've experienced, but in the case of some organizations like the Municipal Airport Authority, be able to operate for several years with the significant amount of funds provided by the federal government and state government. So Kent is going to summarize our 3 main buckets that we prepared and have summarized in the memo this evening. We're going to talk about transit, public safety, and public health reimbursements. And so I'll turn it over to Kent.
Yes, thank you, Mike. And I just wanted to start by kicking this off. The last time we probably formally talked about grants and the impact of COVID grants was during the budget process. As you recall, during the mayor's discussion, we had put placeholders in for the expected revenues. And at that time, that was about 11.4 million. And at this point, now that a lot of these grants have matured, we've received 15 grant awards from 10 different grant agencies, sum total of about $56.3 million. 21.6 of that is for the airport, so if you set that aside, that's about $35 million worth of money to deal with this. Like Mike said, we broke it down into buckets in your cover letter so you could understand kind of how we're managing these. Under transit, we received $7.9 million. That was a federal grant that allowed us to fund transit at 100% for approximately 2 years. That money will expire near the end of 2021, and so there will be some subsidy requirement for transit as we finish up next year's budget. That's a 100% cost share. Typically, transit is either 80-20 or 50-50, so that was a change in the cost share at the federal level that give us the ability to spend more on the COVID-related costs. The state of North Dakota was one of our largest donors with regard to passing along the stimulus money. The state of North Dakota received $1.25 billion as a minimum distribution from the CARES Act, and they approved a distribution plan to political subdivisions to pay it out based upon the police department's sworn officer roster. So they essentially funded through that CARES grant a $15 million estimated grant to reimburse us for our police. Categorically, that was eligible in the CARES grant, and that's how they chose to pass that funding along to us. That bucket is probably the most fungible at this point because it goes into the general fund, and we report the salaries for the police departments that have been incurred for the year, and then once it's in the general fund, it would be subject to appropriation in the budget process. We do have a placeholder with regard to planned activities for that to include $500,000 for body cameras. That would probably be the hardware cost. At Finance Committee, we talked about potentially some form of a salary need to run the body camera system. That would need to be worked out. And we also, with regard to police capital, have a $2.2 million placeholder. As you recall, we remodeled the BSI facility a couple of years ago. They moved into the facility, and we would seek to find a funding source for that. And the last item was in our disaster fund. We're carrying about a $900,000 deficit, just an accumulation of items that are ineligible for any grants based upon the nuances of eligibility, primarily FEMA. So we have a $900,000 placeholder for that. So if you bear that into mind, again, that going forward in the budget works to our advantage because we will receive that entire $15 million by, we've received about $12 million already, and we'll get the last payment in January. With regard to Fargo Cass Public Health, they're the ones doing all the heavy lifting at this point. Kudos to their efforts and their leadership in this. The state also, early on, appropriated 2 grants to us, the sum total about $9.2 million. The Red River Task Force is the largest benefactor, and that is what is funding all of the COVID-related costs as we move forward. Ironically, those state COVID grants to the local health agency, including the one for the Red River Task Force, they expire on 12/31 of this year. So to the extent that we don't hear anything more from the state or from the federal agencies, then we're funding on our own the CARES and the Corona expenditures moving forward. But because of the flexibility we received from the state and the $15 million award in the police grant, the Finance Committee feels as though we have adequate liquidity to be able to appropriate funds for the future activities, to include the quarantining, the vaccination, and the continued activities of the Red River Task Force. So, like Mike said earlier, we feel like we're very fortunate to have the funding we've received. We just want to draw your attention to the fact that the main funding source for the public health expenses will cease as we know it so far at the end of the year. See if I had anything else. And with regard to the Red River Task Force and then the local public health grant, there is a significant spend in this last quarter because they have rental assistance programs. They have contributions to food banks to feed hungry people. and those social type activities are passing through this quarter. And so by the time we get done closing the books in the end of the year, we will have expended about 80% of those, 80 to 85% of those funds. I think that's excellent. In fact, those estimates at the time COVID was just breaking were developed by the staff at the Fargo Cass Public Health. And I think they did an excellent job of visioning and thinking about what our needs were, and they made those numbers quite large. But the needs of the community certainly have, we've had the need to draw off of those resources. So that's a quick update with regard to that. Again, just for your institutional memory, the transit grants will last at least a couple of years. The FAA grants will last approximately 4 years. And the grants from the state will expire at the end of this year. And I'd be happy to try to field any.
Commissioners, any questions? Mike, you have a comment?
I just wanted to thank Kent's staff for really doing a great job tracking this amount of new revenue. And as Kent mentioned, as I've mentioned, we're incredibly grateful. We're incredibly appreciative of these dollars because they are supporting our operations and our critical infrastructure as we respond to COVID. But I think that we feel very confident here as we approach year end that we, as Kent said, have the liquidity to be able to manage, the future into 21 as well. And we're going to come back and keep tracking this and provide additional reports in early 21 as we learn more about maybe future CARES allocations, as well as other programs that we're going to look to the state of North Dakota for potential partnership on as well. So we're going to be talking to our state partners.
So just the commissioners know, I've asked Desi Fleming to come up with a budget for the next 3 months in 21, so we have some idea how much this might consume. And it would be public health issues as well as housing. And we're working with Nicole Crutchfield as well for rental assistance to see what that might cost. So when we talk about a mid-year adjustment, I'm trying to deliver to you what possible costs we have to look forward to the new year. And we also don't know if the state is going to look for ways of putting some more money into those efforts as well. And legislative session starts this winter, so that'll be addressed at that time. Mike, you're going to talk to us a little bit about economic impact on the restaurant and bar industry. I know several of the commissioners have been working on this and want to try to figure out if we can do something. So what is the report on that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Jim Gilmore is going to be joining me at the podium. We talked to the Finance Committee a little earlier today just about some of the early work Jim has done in this space, and we have a lot of follow-up on this as well. There have been some significant impacts to hospitality and to our restaurants and retail establishments. And so Jim's going to summarize that, some of the research that he has found to date, and some potential options as we look to the future.
Thank you. Both the Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC and the Chamber have been communicating with the business community to make sure that they're aware of whatever federal and state resources are available to assist them. They've been doing that since things started to shut down in April. I've been looking at some data to try to get an idea which sectors of the economy have been most affected by the COVID in the economy. And one of the sources of that data is the number of people that are employed in different sectors of the economy. This is monthly job service data on employment. It's a survey of several thousand businesses around the state, and we can get numbers monthly. Just for a historical perspective, from 2017 to 2019, we were seeing in this metro area of Cass, Clay County, growth of by over 1,000 jobs per year. When we look at the impact, it's been rather dramatic to go down. If we look at October of this month, there are 5,000 less people employed in Cass, Clay County than there was a year ago. That drop was rather abrupt. In March of 2020 to April 2020, a drop in 13,000 jobs in 1 month. We look at the leisure hospitality. This was where the largest percentage drop in employment was. Again, in October it was at 14,000, dipped a little bit. Some of that might have been seasonal, but dropped by over 50% in 1 month from 14,000 to 7,000. It's come back some, but certainly it's not back all the way. The Convention and Visitors Bureau has looks at hotel occupancy. The most recent week, according to the CVB, occupancy was at 40%. Last year at the same time, it was at 58%. But the revenue drop was even worse. Drop in revenue at hotels by over 42%. The CVB has been working with the state. The Department of Commerce has some grant programs for restaurants. I think those applications are due the end of this week. We're trying to get word out to restaurants about that. That's a $25,000 grant. Hotels are not at this point eligible, but I know the CVB is working with the state to try to add them as an eligible activity. The other thing that we looked at, again, it's hard to get good data on percentage drop in sales at these places because that might even be more than the employment. However, environmental health, they're keeping a list. Because this is a retail trade number that hasn't dropped as dramatically. I think there's been a shift in retail, though. You know, if you're around town, you'll see the help wanted signs at the hardware store and the grocery store, but other businesses are suffering. As far as the impact on businesses, the environmental health regulates anyone that's serving food or in hotels. And the non-renewals, essentially, it looks like there's about 30 business closures so far this year. Some of these might be temporary. I don't know what the typical year is, but this is apparently, I think, higher than usual, with 7 hotels not renewing their license, not even going to get a license for 2021. 19 restaurants and breweries, and then 4 others. I think there's a child care center and is one of those. And so we'll continue to talk to environmental health and see how this compared to a year ago. And they're keeping this list of businesses that are, many of these are, they're closing and they will not reopen. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Gehrig.
Dave and I spoke being liquor control, and we're wondering if there's some things that we can do as far as that goes. There's a renewal fee every year for a liquor license for a restaurant, or it might be $10,000, might be $1,000. But for some of these businesses, that might mean making payroll that month or something like that. Are we able to waive those fees in the city, or is that not fairness under the law, I suppose?
I know earlier this year, the Finance Committee recommended that, like on utility bills, to at least, not be charging people late fees and interest if they're not able to pay their utility bills. And I don't know the extent that was used, but I don't know if you can address the liquor license question.
Yeah, as Jim mentioned, I think one of the things we want to try to collect as much data as we can to try to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and how long we think it might happen. And one of our good Finance Committee discussions this morning was, let's measure twice and cut once on it. So if we're trying to provide some targeted relief beyond what the federal government might also provide, that we're doing it in a real precise way, in a way that's meaningful. And so certainly defer to Commissioner Pepcorn and the mayor as well. But we really want to do our homework on that. So we come back with some thoughtful recommendation to the commission for some later consideration and to the Finance Committee.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, so we could, we'd like to do this as soon as possible, but so like you said, Tony and I have talked about this, the liquor license for next year to consider waiving that, rebating that, the property tax, the city of Fargo's percentage of that. And I do think what Mike said is important. We need to know what the numbers are too before we act, but we have some time before these need to be in effect, and then also utilities. So those things, they're not huge numbers, and obviously the state and the federal government, they have programs, but I think it's important symbolically that we step up and help these businesses however we can. And I don't think the numbers are going to be huge numbers, but I think it's very important for us to show that obviously we rely on them every year for paying their taxes to provide services for them. But I think at this time, this is a time for us to step up and do something to help them, because I think it's a legitimate thing. And so my main thing is, obviously the hotels are important too, but to me, the bars and restaurants, they should all be eligible for this. And so that's what I'd like us to do, to instruct the staff to pursue, to find out what their numbers are, and then I think we should support this. I think it'd be a great thing.
Commissioner Preston, you had some concerns about this area as well. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, actually, I have a question. Jim, do you have any sense, is there tracking of the number of businesses that have actually accessed either the PPP or the ERG as it's happening now? You know, I got the sense that small businesses have a little more, and when I'm talking small, I mean really small, probably 10 employees or less, or 20 or less, that they have some difficulty in actually accessing some of those programs just because of, and I'm also thinking new American businesses may not have a strong relationship with an accountant or an attorney that helps them work through that process. Do you have a sense of how many have been able to access programs?
Yeah, I don't have a number. I think the Greater Fargo Moore EDC is tracking some of that, and I know there's some data available. I just don't have it with me. But I think you're right. I do have the sense that the people have a strong relationship with their banker. Were able to get in and access these programs versus some of the smaller businesses that are a little less sophisticated.
Yeah, and it seems like those would be the ones that we need to really focus on and target, the ones that are falling through the cracks.
Commissioner Gary?
Dave, do you want to make that, I don't know if we need this or not. Do you want to make that into a motion to look at the liquor license fees, the property taxes, the utilities for the bars and restaurants, and whatever industries you want to include in that? Because I think I want to direct staff to do that soon, so that we can get this ball rolling.
Yep, I'll make the motion, just to focus on the bar and restaurant industry for now. I do, and perhaps in the future we can expand it, but to me, that's the good starting point.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on that item? Commissioner Preston?
Can I just jump in?
Yeah, the only.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
She has something.
The only question I would have is, there's a lot of small retail, and I'm looking down Broadway, and you see a few of them that are closing already, including retail in that.
I totally agree. And Mr. Chair, can I just add one thing? So when I talk about the property tax, a lot of small businesses are not the owners of the property. So there's a way that we can do that so they can know what that property tax reduction is, and so they can contact their landlord and say, here's what the reduction is. I would appreciate it if you would help. Do you get what I'm saying? That not all of them. And so I do think there are some things that we need to look at and the staff can look at. But this is, I think it's very important for us, and I think it will be very, I think it'll mean a lot to businesses, even if the amount of money is not a huge amount. I think it'll mean something. So thank you.
Did you want to include then small businesses as the staff figures it out, or did you just want to do bar and restaurants?
Mr. Chair, this is just my editorial comment. I think I'd rather have us start small and do it well, and then if it does well, then we can consider, because I do think hotels and retail, I mean, when we drive around, you can see those are the other ones that are being affected. I'll just give one more comment. We intentionally are limiting bars and restaurants. We're closing them at 10, and so to me, that changes the text versus some of the other businesses. Thank you.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. And, Commissioner Pepcorn, and Commissioner Gehrig, I'm entirely on board with us starting the conversations of what we can do. My recommendation would be we don't be too narrow in who qualifies for our consideration, because there's a lot of folks that don't fit into a lot of these pigeonholes. This is kind of on target here, but and what we're talking about is what's happened already. I'm really concerned about what's coming in January. Just in the last 8 months or so, people have had PPP loans, economic EIDL loans, disaster loans from the SBA. They've had unemployment boosts of $600 a month or week for some of their people qualifying. We've had Bank of North Dakota disaster loans, emergency loans. We've had ERG grants and loans, which have finished. Now the HERG grants, which are the $25,000 ones. There's the interest rate grant program from the Bank of North Dakota, and then there's a $1,200 stimulus checks, and we're still in trouble. That's my concern, is, so if my suggestion would be, let's open this discussion, but let's not be too narrow in who's adversely affected by the pandemic. We may be surprised. There's a lot of ancillary spin-off businesses that are integrally tied to the bar and restaurant community that aren't technically a bar or a restaurant, but they're just as or more troubled than the bars or restaurants. So I like where we're going. My recommendation is to keep it open in our thinking so that we may be surprised at who's facing hardship, and they will tell us.
Commissioner Gary.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Commissioner Preston, is that okay, Tony?
Sure, yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yep.
I would just echo John's or Commissioner Strand's comments in that I believe what we're just asking staff to do is study the issue and bring back some information or recommendations. So I would say at this point, let's keep it broad.
Okay, Commissioner Gary.
Yeah, and to you guys' point, you know, this is just one motion. If you guys have another motion that you want to bring forward as well, it's not precluding looking at a broader scale. The reason that Dave and I talked about the bars and the restaurants specifically and the liquor license and the property tax, things like that, is because we are doing those things that you guys are talking about. We are shutting them down. You know what I mean? And a lot of them are never going to come back unless we do something, even a little thing. So especially being liquor control, that's what sparked us to talk about this was we're charging $10,000 in some cases a year for people to hold a license when they're not in business right now. So let's pass this one. If you guys have another one that you guys want to talk about, let's pass another one. But it's not precluding anything, is what I'm getting.
Mr. Pepcorn.
So, Mr. Chair, so I totally agree with what the other commissioners said, but my example is if we can do this well and it's successful, then we can expand on that. I really like that concept. That I think this will take the staff some time, and so if you make it too broad, then it becomes an overwhelming thing. To me, we have a finite number, and if we do this well, then possibly we can grow that. That's my perspective.
Any others? Commissioner Preston.
Mr. Chairman, I will actually, to counter Commissioner Pepcorn's comments here, we aren't going to have the time probably to go back and pick up additional businesses that may be struggling. So the study and looking at including retail and or other ancillary businesses, I can't imagine that it would add that much work in trying to identify ways to ease the burden on those businesses as well. So actually, I will make an amendment to the motion to include retail and other ancillary businesses that would be impacted by the pandemic.
Second.
Mr. Strand seconds that. Any discussion? Jim and Mike, is that an insurmountable task, or do you think you could start to look at a more global picture?
Yeah, we're happy to look at whatever the commission directs us to look at. I think that this is data that we're going to be able to pull together, and we have some good ideas. We have some good leads. So certainly this is at the discretion of the commission.
Okay. So you have an amendment, Mr. Gary?
Last thing I'll say is just for me, just make sure we look at the liquor license. The reason I'm asking about that is what's the impact to our budget then? You know what I mean? Is it $10 million? And then where do we find that money? That's why I wanted it to be that narrow like that. Because I just don't want to lose focus on what we started talking about, bars and restaurants. So I have no problem getting that global view. And like I said, it doesn't preclude any other ideas. I just don't want to get lost in this big pool of information that no one can understand. You know what I mean? So that's my only concern. I'm all for it. I'll vote yes for it.
So the team could focus on bars and restaurants first, but bring in the other ancillaries as well as priorities. Is that what you're thinking? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. And I know Commissioner Preston has been reaching out to people in the community, but we need to get people around the table, and we need to have, it's not just our staff, it's the whole community. If we can somehow broaden our horizons and bring people to the bench and sit with us and do this with us, there's a lot of folks in our community, a lot of resources and a lot of entities that are peripherally or directly involved with this, but we don't need it all on our shoulders. However, time is of the essence. You know, all of the advocates and the experts and the resources out there, you already know who they are. And there might be some others, like Commissioner Preston, I'm glad you mentioned the New American community and the refugee community. There's some folks out there that just don't fit in the typical mode of business. Like, who'd have thought, I wouldn't know that there's cultures that they don't even work with interest rates. Well, how do you work that into a pandemic economically? So we need to be diverse and inclusive and diverse in our inclusion there.
So we'll have first a roll call on the amendment.
So, Mr. Chair, can I just add a comment, though? The reason it's bars and restaurants needs to have a separate, I believe, is because they've been singled out. They've been told the number of customers they can have in their place of business, and they've been told when they have to close. None of the others have, and so I totally support all this other stuff, but it's gonna spin. And to me, this needs to get done quickly and tightly. Then if that goes well, then we can look at other things. But this category has been singled out by the governor. That's just the way it is. And so all the others are not the same. So I totally support that. I believe there's lots of others that are gonna need lots of support, but if you get this too broad a thing, then nothing will get done. That's my concern. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Roll call vote, please.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Mahoney,
Aye. Now we'll have a roll call on the original motion to support the restaurants and bars.
Well,
As amended.
as amended.
As amended.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Gary,
Yes.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yep. So now we'll go to update on the vaccine distribution. Are you two finished?
Yes, thank you, Commissioners, and I'll just turn this back to Desi and then Suzanne from our nursing program. They're going to talk about attachment number 1. I just want to direct you to that in your packet, and I just want to thank them for their help preparing this outline. And thank you again, Commissioners, for your time this evening on these topics. Thank you.
And Suzanne, I will just let you go ahead and give your update. She's our vaccine person, so she will be providing you the information.
Okay, Suzanne, you're on.
Good evening, Commissioners. I am going to kind of give an overall picture of what vaccine is currently looking like for North Dakota and Cass County. So if we take a look at the potential timing for vaccine arrival, there are some things that have to happen for vaccine to be approved for emergency use authorization. They have to be there has to be a review by VRPAC, which is an independent committee that is under the FDA. And that reviews the development, authorization, and all licensures for the COVID-19 vaccine. Every indication at this point is that December 10th, they are planning to meet for the Pfizer vaccine, which I will go into a little bit more in depth in a bit. And then December 17th for Moderna. I should also state that this information there's been a few changes since I put together the update on Wednesday, and I will be talking through those as I go. This information changes kind of daily for us, and so we are making adjustments as need be. Also, for a requirement for the EUA is the ACIP review, which is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is under the CDC. Typically, they will meet 24 to 48 hours after the review is done by VRPAC, and then they recommend the priority groups and the use of vaccine in the United States, which also is about like if a vaccine is 21 days from first dose is at day 0, 21 days till the next dose. They will give recommendations as far as how much leeway there is in that 21-day series, just as kind of an idea of what kind of other recommendations they give. I also have learned that ACIP has scheduled a meeting tomorrow, December 1st. I'm not sure what is on that meeting. I could not find an agenda, but they may be discussing these vaccines coming out. The allocations will be coming from the North Dakota Department of Health, and early indications are that Pfizer vaccine could be arriving for administration in North Dakota the week of December 14th. The allocations are based on population, and at this point, the Pfizer vaccine is, we're expecting in the state of North Dakota, 6,825 doses. Once the Moderna vaccine, which is the second candidate that we kind of think will be coming out shortly after Pfizer, once that one it has emergency use authorization, that one we are expecting 2,000 doses, and this is that initial allocation. We will also be expecting weekly allocations for the state and for distribution amongst the counties and different enrolled providers weekly after that point. The ACIP, if we talk about priority groups, so we know that the vaccine numbers initially coming out are not huge. And so ACIP, which I referenced earlier, as well as the state, and we are recommending it within agencies themselves, it's important to come up with priority groups so we know what to expect for who should get vaccine first and to kind of work our way down to the point when we finally get to the community vaccination plan. Initially, we are expecting healthcare workers, and just recently they added long-term care residents into that initial group. The initial allocation that we will be receiving is approximately 10% of the healthcare workers in North Dakota, as the number of healthcare workers as given to us by the state is around 69,000 employees and healthcare workers, and then 13,000 long-term care residents. So we have a lot of people to get through before we can get to the community phase of vaccination. The initial thought is referral hospitals, such as our larger health systems, will be that first priority group for direct care workers. And then after that, it would be those rural critical access hospitals. So if we're talking about the vaccine, I shouldn't say the top vaccine, the first vaccine that we're expecting would be the Pfizer vaccine. That one was submitted for emergency use authorization on November 20th. There are some considerations with storage and handling with this one. It does require ultra cold chain, the -70 below storage, dry ice storage when it's not in a freezer to that capacity. It must be mixed before administration, and it only has about, once it's taken out of that dry ice and put into the fridge, it has about 5 days before the allocation needs to be gone through. At this point, there's 2 doses for that vaccine, one on day 0 and then the next one on day 21. And the efficacy that has been released for that vaccine with both doses is 95%. Moderna, initially last week, the indication was that they were going to submit for EUA, but it sounds like they did today. The storage and handling on that has a little bit more forgiveness. It needs to be frozen, but at regular freezer temperatures. It can be in the fridge for 7 days at this point. They are applying for 30 days in the refrigerator. So once it goes through EUA, that may be the consideration we are given. And there is no mixing required. It is also a 2-dose vaccine, and it is 28 days apart for those doses. Initially, they had reported 94.5% efficacy. Today, once they submitted, or once they were preparing for submission, they did release a 94.1% efficacy rate. We also know there are a couple more candidates kind of coming around the bend. There's an AstraZeneca and a Janssen vaccine, and both of those are expected. Earliest availability would be the first quarter of 2021. The Janssen vaccine is the only candidate that is a single dose, and that has also kind of been referred to, if you've seen in the media, Johnson & Johnson vaccine. There's other candidates that are tentatively available, maybe spring of 2021. So there's a lot of vaccine coming around the bend here. If we look locally, administration plans, we are working with healthcare partners. Many of them have a self-administration plan where they will be enrolled providers with the state. They will receive their own vaccine, maintain the storage and handling of that, and vaccinate their healthcare workers themselves. Or some of them, especially our long-term care group homes, are developing partnerships with local pharmacies or with CVS in a federal program. We recently also learned that Thrifty White was added to that federal program because of an application they put in, because North Dakota doesn't have those large chain vaccines, as many of them as other states do, and so they were trying to best accommodate for the long-term care facilities. Those 2 programs, CVS and Thrifty White, will go to a long-term care facility and vaccinate staff and residents on site. So if we look at what Fargo Cass Public Health is doing, we are taking all this information and reviewing it often, and we have assembled a team here to figure out a plan to best serve our community. We know that communication is going to be a really large part of this. There's a lot of disinformation and misinformation surrounding the development process of COVID vaccine and many other areas around the vaccine itself. In order to receive or to have herd immunity in North Dakota, the goal and the need would be that 70% of our eligible population will be vaccinated. And just a reference point on that is approximately 56% of North Dakotans receive an influenza vaccine, and that's only one dose. So we know that we have a lot of work with communication and to get this into our community and get the vaccine out there. We have been having individual meetings and calls with healthcare priority groups to ensure vaccination plans are in place. We've met with large healthcare systems in the county, long-term cares, group homes, EMS, and pharmacy, discussing what plans might look like to ensure that we can best support the community when the vaccine becomes available. We've also done some survey or requested our healthcare partners to do surveys within their entities to kind of determine what we're thinking with this first round as far as the uptake of vaccine. It's kind of mixed interest. We have some facilities that will say they have large interest and some that is they really need to do some work themselves, and they are working toward getting out some communication and education to promote vaccine in their facilities. Fargo Cass Public Health has determined, at least in this initial push of the vaccine as it's coming from the state, to get it out and provide the best coverage we can for our community, is that there will not be a charge for this initial phase. The reason we did that was to reduce any potential barriers surrounding cost or insurance, and really just to protect our community and try to get this COVID virus under control in a timely manner. A vaccination site for healthcare workers that do not have a vaccination plan or available options will be set up. That will be functioning as a closed pod. So what I mean by that is that we will have a site that those entities for healthcare workers initially, because that is where our initial focus will be, is if they don't have a vaccination plan, or if their vaccination plan didn't work initially how they thought it was going to and they need some support, we will function as a closed pod point of dispensing, and we will invite them to be a part of that and get vaccination as we have our allocations come through as well. After the priority groups are gone through, we are going to move to community vaccine with general population. This timeline has not yet been established, and we have no indication of when that may be. During that time, we will be partnering with pharmacies and other health partners to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the community as best we can.
Susan?
And like I said,
Susan?
yes.
I think you've given us enough information for now, because we don't have what we're doing with the public yet. I think the commissioners will contact you for any other information. But in interest of time, I would just say thank you very much for all you've told us tonight. We appreciate it. We know vaccines are coming, and my commissioners will contact you. Desi, if you would provide her email address if there are any additional questions. But I think you've covered this very thoroughly, and it's fantastic to hear the vaccine is finally coming. So I appreciate the information you've given, but if it'd be okay, or do you have one other pertinent thing you want to say to us, or is this okay?
That actually, Mayor, was the very end of my presentation. So you timed it perfectly. I have nothing else.
Perfect. You and I are the same time frame then. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And Desi, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other questions, Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Desi, how are your people holding up?
They are doing remarkably well. Obviously, we have had COVID impacts within our staff, and so we're all very well aware that this is not a very fun virus to deal with, and so some of us have been personally impacted and have had to support each other that way. But for the most part, they keep the mission going. We've had to be really flexible. We've had to work short staff. We'd have to work long hours, but they're very good at what they do.
And lastly, if I might, Desi, if there's anything that keeps you up at night, what is it? That if it's anything especially we could help with?
I think it's just it's the unknown. I think we have to be really, I know we're seeing like our numbers kind of starting to waft down a little bit, but it's really important just to stay the course and to continue to work on our mitigation, things that we do. I think we really need to, encourage people that when this vaccine comes, to strongly encourage vaccination, because that is going to be one of the things that's going to help us to move forward. And so to support that, to, make sure there's correct information out there and make sure that people feel safe in getting, a really strong, good vaccine.
Thank you. Go to item 33, recommendation to accept the Community Development Block Grant, Round 3 allocation from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Nicole Crutchfield to explain.
Yes, Mayor. Actually, you approved the activities last 2 weeks ago. Normally, this would be on the consent agenda. And so if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But just looking to accept the actual second round of grant funds from CDBG.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Arletta goes second. Any discussion? We already saw what it was. It's $5 million. How much?
No, it's, let's see, it's 400,000.
400,000.
464,000.
Okay. Good. Roll call vote, please.
Gary,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye. Number 34, recommendation to prioritize projects submittal of federal grant. I saw Tom Knockloose on here, and Brenda here, but I get Jeremy Gordon. How did that happen?
I think somebody's skipping ahead in line here, so that's 35.
Okay. Kimber, wrong person. Okay, Jeremy Gordon, here he goes.
All right, Mayor, Commissioners, good to see you tonight. Nice short meeting tonight. We'll wait for the presentation to come up. But fall is the time of year when DOT sends out solicitation letters to the agencies, municipalities around the state for projects they want to use federal aid for. So here we go. So we've got what happens with federal aid. You know, the federal government usually never works quickly. So the project we're applying for tonight will be for 23, 24, and 25. But we've already loaded the wagon with projects in the next 4 years as well. So just to refresh your memory real quick, here are the projects that are already slated to receive some federal aid. 64th Avenue overpass over I-29 has been bid out. That's going to take place over the next 2 years. And North University, right up next to the airport, that's slated to bid this spring. And then the next 3 years are still a year away from final plans. So 32nd Avenue will continue on where we were near I-29. We're going to work our way east until we ultimately get to University Drive. 2023, we'll finish off 52nd Avenue going west Cheyenne Street from where we ended near the Deer Creek addition. We'll buy 3 buses, I think, in 2023. And then Main Avenue west University to 25th Street. The last phase in the Fargo Morad, at least the Fargo, West Fargo region on Main Avenue will take place in 2023. And then 2024, we'll continue 32nd Avenue and buy more buses. So this is a quick picture. What is not red are projects that I just went over. They're the colored projects probably sprinkled all through town. The red projects are the ones we're going to get to in a second. Those are the ones we're applying for federal money. So there's 3 categories. There's urban grant programs, urban road programs, and transportation alternatives. So, okay, here's pictures of what I just went through. Stop me if you're interested.
Moving kind of quick there.
All right, so these are the projects that we would like to receive federal aid. This is the urban grant program, which specifically goes to the downtown area of all 11 metros in North Dakota. So last year we applied for this project. We received partial funding. We wanted to move forward right as COVID hit, so we realized funds might be short. So we said, thanks, but no thanks. We'll apply for full funds next year. So that's this project again, Ped Bridge right outside of City Hall here. And that would be the only one under urban grant. So the urban road projects, we've got 5 of them. And this is kind of the penicillin of federal aid for roads or pedestrian projects. You can kind of use this anywhere as long as the roads are either collectors or arterials or pedestrian facilities such as this. So the 40th Avenue Bridge over the Red River has been identified as a gap in our bike system. And it's a very desirable project to cross the river. So we want to use our urban roads money to do this. It would be split up 50-50 with us and Moorhead. Unlike the lift bridges, we would make this thing very tall and very long. That's why the cost is up there. So it would never get flooded. Cost estimate on this is right around $4 million. So it's right on 40th Avenue. Here's another picture. The yellow would actually be the bridge. The red would be the path. So it would be 800 feet of bridge. With a little luck, we won't have any piers in the river. You can span 200 feet or so we wouldn't have to worry about
the normal flow on the river. So that's the first project. The next two, we want to throw $1.2 million dollars to striping. Believe it or not, striping is pretty expensive. So instead of using sales tax, we want to use some federal aid, get some free money from the feds to help us out with our system. That doesn't have a picture, unfortunately. Next one is 17th Avenue South, just west of I-29. This road was originally built in 86, asphalt road showing its disrepair. That would be a full street reconstruction. So the last two are pavement management, pavement preservation. First would be Mill and Overland 25th Street, south of 32nd Avenue. We did this with ARA money back in 2009. We'd like to do it again in 2025. And then just concrete spot repair. The 3/4 are 45th Street, Main Avenue, and 7th Avenue North. And the last category are the transportation alternatives. This is the paths, safe routes to school, etc. We've got 4 really good projects. We applied for this one last year. They said no thanks. This is along the Drain 27. It's perfectly set up to just get the funding and move forward. Bison Village Edition, 10th Street alignment in North Fargo behind the wastewater plant. It's an area where we've got a shortage of shared use paths in the area. So as the Bison Village Edition went together here, there was a plan with the Park District to put a path on the drain system. And we've got the 10th Street right away behind the wastewater plant, so we'd put it there up to 37th Avenue North. Second to last project is Drain 53 in South Fargo. This is near the Davies High School in the drain system. And the last one, we're almost there with all the property acquisitions. There's 2 houses left in this stretch. So it's along River Drive from 40th Avenue up to Harwood Drive. It's amazing that there used to be houses on every one of those lots, but 10 years later, here we are. So here's a summary. We get about our balance with the state for our urban roads is at 8 million. So imagine that our 5 projects come up to 8 million, and then the Ped Bridge is at we're asking for 2.7. Last time they gave us 1.1, and then the shared use path projects, their max is 290,000 per project. So there's that, and here's the motion. Any questions?
The path that you have in the bike path on River Drive, is that inside the dike or outside the dike?
This one?
Yeah.
This would be on the wet side. So there's a pretty decent shelf just at the base of the levee before it goes up.
Be a nice path for that area. Do I have a motion?
Yeah.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions of Jeremy Gordon? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Item 35, receive and file proposed 2021 capital improvement plan report and a 4-year CIP. Tom Knockmus and Brenda Derrick. I'm saying you're going through all 54 slides here today, or what are we doing here?
Oh, you guys. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I know it's late, so I mean, I am happy. Tom is on virtually, but we are happy to condense this down for you guys, and it's kind of the same presentation we do every year, get you updated. So we're happy to kind of get to the meat of it if that's something you'd like us to do. It's completely up to you.
I have a question. I'll just do it.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Commissioner.
So it's a CIP, it's a plan, it's not set in stone. If someone has a concern specifically about this, we talk to you, we can talk about that and then bring it back to commission for a change, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're right, it's the same kind of thing every year. It's very in-depth, and I appreciate that very much, but, yeah. I think it'd be more valuable if we could talk to you one-on-one maybe afterwards and get it.
Commissioner Strand.
Perfect. So, because tonight we do want to just a receive and file. We gave you our capital improvement plan book, so you could actually go through it. And then I'm happy to set up one-on-one meetings also, and we can just talk about it also.
Mr. Strand, you had a question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Brenda, I'm just curious, this topic here in the past has really triggered immense discussions with regard to special assessments.
Correct.
Aspects of the CIP. And so now that we've gone through all that, I think it's important for the public to get a sense of how things changed to their benefit as far as out of their own pocketbooks, just as an overview.
So when we adopted the new special assessment policy, so, originally we had a 50-50 policy, and then we resorted back to the rates or values of a 2013 policy. And those values didn't change. And so those values were included in the approved policy that we have today. And then also on top of that is dependent on if we can get all the prairie dog funds. We do need the whole package though to be able to do a special assessment, even a reduction further. But we have to fill that final bucket to be able to do that.
So a year ago, we put some projects on hold, some
Correct.
lift stations and some other aspects. Are we back to full bore ahead now, or are there still some projects that are being parsed into the future because of that shift in responsibility for payment?
Correct. We do have projects that are being pushed out because of going back to those low rates back in the 2013 values. And so we are living, we get approximately 7 million in sales tax every year, and we are doing our best to stay in our bucket. But it'll be impacting a lot of the pavement management is kind of some of the concern. And so next year, 2021, is when we'll be doing our next pavement index. We'll have the pavement management group come in, re-rate the roads, take a look at them. We do that every 4 years. Is that correct, Tom? Oh, I might have lost him. But I think we do that every 4 years.
Any other questions? So we cut back a bit because of COVID and funding and Prairie Dog not fully being full. But even
Correct.
cutting back, your CIP for 2021 is worth how much money?
Say that again. Sorry.
So you cut back because the Prairie Dog Fund was not fully funded, and you also don't, because of COVID and a variety of other issues on money we got from the state, et cetera. You cut back, original CIP plan was how many million, and how many million is it now?
Okay,
Just
so
for the public, Brenda.
Oh, yep. So our original 2020 CIP, if we take out new development and alley and flood, which are different buckets of money, the original CIP was around 62 million, and what we had reduced it down to was about 41 million.
So it's a significant change. I just need the public to know that. I think Commissioner Strand was trying to point that out. Commissioner Gary.
Is that including assessments for homes, new homes going in?
For the 40 and
Yeah.
no.
That's not.
No. So the new development, new development in 2020, we actually had a lot of new development requests, and next year we have a lot of new development requests for next year also. And so new development, we had almost $23.5 million worth of new development infrastructure this year.
That's crazy. That's good.
Yeah. And I mean, so when we were doing the slides, we couldn't even fit all the new development requests that we've already gotten on one slide. We had to do it in two, which is impressive for this time of the year.
Very impressive. So what would the commission like to do? Receive and file, and specific questions you go to the team and ask? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I move to receive and
It's
file.
open to the public. They can get it online. It's in our site, right?
Yep, we will get it posted and everyone can look at it. And then what I will do is I'll just follow it up with emails to everyone and see if you'd like to sit down and visit before we'll be back in front of you in 2 weeks for an approval.
Commissioner Preston, do you have any question in specific?
Sorry, yes, I did, but I could perhaps ask Brenda. I'll just send her an email.
Okay. So can I have a motion, please, to receive and file?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Gary,
Yes.
Pipcorn,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Aye.
36, applications for property tax exemptions for improvements made to buildings. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. Any other business of the commission? Motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.